this silent struggle that's way more common than you might think. So let's get into it and really explore the psychology behind this hidden battle.
So, this is the central question we're diving into today. Why does having this profound sense of a calling seem to come with an equally profound vulnerability? It's a conflict that can stir up so much guilt and isolation, but just understanding the mechanics behind it, well, that's the very first step toward finding some clarity.
Right. So the myth, the thing we all kind of assume, is that a divine purpose should act like some kind of shield, right? It should make you immune to all these messy human struggles. But the reality? It's often the exact opposite. A higher calling doesn't give you a free pass. It can actually put a target on your back and make the fight even more intense.
All right, so here's our game plan for breaking this all down. We're going to walk through 5 key areas. First, we'll look at the paradox itself. Then we'll explore the war going on inside and the assault coming from the outside. After that, we'll talk about bridging that gap between spiritual gifts and human weakness. And finally, we'll map out a real path to victory.
First up, the paradox of purpose. This is all about that constant tension between feeling called to something sacred while still being, vulnerably human. And what's really fascinating is that this isn't some new modern problem. Not at all.
I mean, ancient texts are absolutely filled with examples of this. Just think about King David, a guy who's celebrated for his incredible devotion, yet he completely fell to lust with Bathsheba. Or Samson, a man with literal divine strength whose entire mission was put at risk because of his weakness for Delilah. What this shows us is that being set apart doesn't get rid of temptation, it just raises the stakes, big time.
So how does this tension actually build up on the inside? Well, that brings us right to our second section, the inner world's war. Here, we're going to unpack the psychological and spiritual stuff that fuels this internal fight. And we're starting with a concept that might actually surprise you.
So folks with a really strong sense of purpose, they often have what you could call a heightened spiritual sensitivity. But here's the catch. It's a total double-edged sword. Sure, it makes you more aware of a divine presence, but it can also make you more tuned into darker influences. It's like your spiritual antennas turn way up, picking up all the signals, the good and the bad, which can make temptations feel incredibly powerful.
Now for the second internal piece of the puzzle, and honestly, this is crucial. Think about this idea. Emotional wounds often act as open doors for fake or counterfeit forms of comfort. Lust isn't always just about a physical desire. A lot of the time, it's a symptom of something way, way deeper.
See, when there's this unhealed pain festering inside from rejection, abandonment, maybe some past trauma, lust can feel like a quick, easy escape. It gives you this fleeting feeling of being wanted or being powerful, but it's a counterfeit comfort. It never actually heals the wound. It just creates this vicious cycle of temporary relief followed by a whole lot of shame.
Okay, so let's shift gears from the internal battle to what's happening on the outside. This is Section 3, the outer world's assault. This is all about the external pressures that make this whole struggle even harder, starting with something super common, but also super dangerous: isolation.
Following a unique calling can be an incredibly lonely road. I mean, not many people are going to get your journey. And that isolation, it creates the perfect breeding ground for these hidden battles. Lust absolutely thrives in secrecy, away from the light of community and accountability.
So why is being isolated so dangerous here? Well, it means you get fewer reality checks from people you trust. There's no accountability to help weaken that secret struggle. It just feeds the shame cycle over and over again. And that fear of being judged if you speak up, it stops you from getting the very help you need to break free.
This struggle is also often framed in the context of spiritual warfare, and this famous passage from Ephesians is a big reason why. The core idea here is that the battle isn't just psychological, there's a belief that it's also a spiritual assault aimed squarely at those with a divine purpose.
And the logic goes like this. If you have the potential to make a really significant positive impact on the world, you basically become a high-value target. Derailing your mission becomes a top priority for any spiritual opposition, and lust is seen as this really potent weapon to create distraction, shame, and scandal, basically to neutralize your purpose.
Okay, so this brings us to a really confusing part of the struggle, which we're going to cover in our fourth section, Bridging the Gap. This is all about exploring that strange paradox of being spiritually gifted and yet, at the same time, personally so vulnerable. So you've got this wild contrast, right? On one hand, you might have these incredibly powerful spiritual gifts, leadership, service, maybe even prophecy. But on the other hand, you're still just living in weak human flesh, vulnerable to all its frailties, and that includes lust. How on earth can both of those things be true at the same time?
So here's the crucial point to get. Spiritual gifts are seen as flowing from a divine source, and they can operate even if the person, the vessel, is flawed. This means a powerful anointing does not automatically equal spiritual maturity. And that gap, that space between your public giftedness and your private struggle, can be an incredibly dangerous place to be.
Okay, we have explored the why from so many angles. Now let's talk about the how. In our final section, Forging Your Victory, we are shifting from just explaining the problem to laying out an actionable, empowering path to actually winning this internal war.
The path to victory really seems to rest on 4 key pillars. First, adopting spiritual disciplines like prayer and study. Second, finding your community, for accountability and mentorship. Third, and this is a big one, actively addressing those emotional wounds we talked about. And fourth, learning to rely on divine grace instead of just your own sheer willpower.
And this right here, it completely reframes the goal. Victory isn't about achieving some perfect state where you're never tempted again. That's not realistic. It's about building the resilience to consistently respond with wisdom, with courage, and with a reliance on something much greater than yourself.
As we wrap this up, I really want you to consider this powerful shift in perspective. What if this intense battle you're facing isn't actually proof that you're a failure? What if, instead, the intensity of the struggle is really a measure of the incredible potential that you carry?
There's this beautiful quote that just captures this idea perfectly. The story of redemption is not about perfect characters. It is about flawed human beings who repeatedly encounter divine mercy and rise. This whole journey, it's not about perfection. It's about restoration. It's about learning how to get back up again and again. And so, the final question I want to leave you with is this. What if your greatest struggle isn't the thing that disqualifies you from your purpose? What if it's actually the very gateway to your most authentic, most compassionate, and most powerful calling? That's definitely something to think about.